lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Sick, which was released January 13th, 2023, Friday the 13th, exclusively on Peacock. So, Rowan, let's kick things off the way we oftentimes do, with me asking you, how much were you looking forward to Sick?
I was mildly interested. I can't remember, was it you or me that saw this was a movie coming out?
So I initially heard of it at TIFF,
Okay.
but it had completely slipped my mind until you mentioned it a week or two ago.
I feel like I only saw it because like an ad on like Bloody Disgusting or like somewhere there was an ad that popped up that was like, COVID-19 horror coming out like this week or something. So I can't really say I was like necessarily looking forward to because I didn't know it existed, but I saw it. I'm always curious. You know, we're just starting to kind of roll out these, you know, COVID-19 themed movies. It seems like all the ones we've gotten have never really dealt with COVID-19. They always just say they're influenced by it. So yeah, I saw it was Kevin Williamson as a writer, so that always piques my interest.
I'm not familiar with Kevin Williamson. What else did he do?
Oh my God! Everybody's thinking about shutting off the episode now.
I'm gonna have to scroll over and click on his name.
So he wrote this kind of indie darling movie called Scream.
Fuck. Oh no.
He wrote this other indie darling called I Know What You Did Last Summer.
All right, yeah, I may have heard of those.
and also just a you know, I forget what season it got canceled, but a show called Dawson's Creek. So yeah, little 90s.
All right, yeah. He's an up and coming writer, I guess, director. You know, well, maybe not director. I don't know, but he's up and coming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know if he's ever directed anything, but I was gonna say that it's kind of interesting because I can't really remember the last thing I saw that he supposedly wrote, but I feel like it wasn't very good. So I was very interested to see how this was. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little apprehensive when you brought this to me, considering it was a Peacock original, and the last Peacock original we reviewed on the show was They/Them. So yeah, I was gonna shoot it down, but after doing a little bit of digging, I saw that it had a lot of positive buzz from the festival circuit and a few favorable reviews on Letterboxd from a few of my mutuals. So I was like, you know what? It's enough to give it a look. I was cautiously optimistic, as optimistic as you can be about a horror movie set during the COVID era while we're living through the COVID era. But yeah, I positive reviews always have me kind of looking forward to it somewhat. And yeah, I never heard about it really until you mentioned it. You know, it's weird that it wasn't on my radar at TIFF other than just based on name recognition, because usually anything new in horror, I will give it a look over and, kind of make a decision on whether or not to see it. It must have been just basically the COVID subject matter that at the time I was like, screw that. I don't really want to watch it. I have no clue. I never heard of anything about it at TIFF, despite, like I said, seeing positive reviews. But yeah, I guess this one just missed me. And with that, I'd say let's just throw it over to the trailer so we can get into the discussion.
Where's your mask? This isn't a vacation, it's a quarantine.
A quarantine in style.
Are you kidding me? This is incredible.
Sick, and it's all ours. The only neighbor is miles away.
I thought you were spending quarantine alone.
What are you doing here?
I wanted to see you, and quarantine can be fun.
Mary.
Jump in, water's fine. Who is this?
I don't know.
That's creepy, Parker.
You're mad. What? I can't let you in. It's not safe. Are you kidding me, lady? Please!
What you just heard is from Sick, written by Kevin Williamson and Caitlin Crabb, and directed by John Hyams, and the story is as follows. Best friends Parker and Miri decide to quarantine at a family lake house, but when past mistakes resurface, they soon learn that their sins cannot remain socially distanced. Now, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Sick?
So I want to start with something that I normally don't start with, which is the runtime, and I just want to give a clap. This is
okay.
I feel like this is what we, on Now Slaying, on the It Slays episodes, we consistently talk about specifically slashers. There's no reason for you to have like a 3-hour slasher movie.
I'm looking at you, Terrifier 2. That's we never covered it on the show. That thing's 2.5 hours long. And maybe a little bit too long.
But this is like, what? This clocks in, I think, at, like 120, 125 or something.
Yeah, it looks 123, and that's with credits.
Yeah, super. I'm loving kind of these, like we said, this is going the Peacock. So the positive of these like made for streamer movies is they know the streamer's attention is really only like an hour and a half. No one's streaming long movies, which is weird because obviously everyone, binge watches these hour-long episodes of TV shows. But when it comes to movies, the streamers just know how to compact it.
Yeah, unless you're Martin Scorsese, like dropping The Irishman, 3.5 hours long.
That's all right.
Yeah, a lot of things are closer to the 90-minute territory for sure.
If Martin wants to do a slasher, I'll give him 3 hours to do it.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
That's a big positive on this, I found, because like I said, like it's pretty tight, it's pretty lean, which kind of works in a slasher, and I said in the intro, obviously I was super excited just because I'm excited about anything COVID. I kind of feel like the first COVID, quote unquote COVID movie we got was Host from Shudder.
Yeah.
And, that wasn't, other than they were on their laptops FaceTiming, like you never dealt with like quarantines or masks. Like there was nothing, COVID-y about it. It was just...
Yeah, I feel like it may have been a topic of conversation in the movie, but it was more so of like this is why we're all on our laptops. I don't remember them like washing their groceries or disinfecting everything and putting on the hand sanitizer and stuff. Like, once again, they're in their homes, so maybe that's why we didn't see it as much. I think maybe near the end of that one, let's say, just not to spoil Host, when it kind of breaks the cameras on the laptop trope, I feel like she might have a mask on at one point, but it's not as to the forefront as this one, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I just thought it really worked. I feel, like I said, Kevin Williamson, I think maybe he's back. He's not going anywhere. This is kind of, I feel like I know what you did last summer, Scream. Obviously, those are, big movies for, like, horror fans. But, I mean, we're talking about the 90s, right? Like, pretty much all of his major output. Like, he also did The Faculty. Like, he wrote The Faculty. And I looked it up. He did direct one movie. He directed Teaching Miss Tingle or whatever.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of that one either.
Oh, that's another, I think, late 90s, early 2000s, like Katie Holmes, kind of like a thriller. I wouldn't say it's a horror movie.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like, I mean, even though Kevin Williamson is kind of put up on this pedestal because of those films, like, he hasn't really done anything. And this, I just think if you like Scream, if you like I Know What You Did Last Summer, if you like these kind of like pretty simple slashers that have like some twists in it, like this definitely has twists in it, which we'll get into more so later in the spoiler.
Of course. Yeah.
But I thought the twists really work. I had a incredible time with this.
Oh, okay.
So the listeners can be set up. I messaged Colton. I was actually like on my way into Halifax for an appointment, which I was going to be stuck in the car for an hour and a half. So I did what I hate to do, And I was like, you know what? I've got the link to it. I'm gonna watch it on my phone. I brought my AirPods.
Broad daylight on your phone in the car.
And I was like, I'm just gonna sit in the car. I'm gonna watch it. And I had a riot with it. I was in the car by myself. I was like laughing. I was clapping. I was just
wow.
I was having such a good time with it. And it's just like I found it was fun. It's nothing like heavy. This is something that like you can kind of watch anytime. Now, I will be interested in kind of the rewatchability of it with the twists, because I think the crux of this movie really depends on that twist, which in, the 2020s, and so it seems that these twists are just like what every horror movie has, which I really feel just hurts overall horror movies because the rewatchability on them. I think if you're looking for like a lean slasher that's fun, that, even in broad daylight, like one of the jump scares got me. I don't know if it was just like,
oh, wow.
I had the AirPods in, so I was like pretty immersed. It was one of the few times that I really liked the sound design. I was like, oh, the sound's awesome in the AirPods. I'm like, I was like, the sound design's really good. And yeah, I think it was just a real fun time. And, I highly recommend it to anybody that, wants something that they're trying to figure out what to watch. And like I said, just something that is going to make you feel seen, having lived through COVID or still living through COVID. Because, this is giving us everything that we have hated about our lives for the last 2-3 years. What were your spoiler-free thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it was pretty good as well. I think it has some great sequences of cat and mouse chase sequences. There's good chemistry across the two leads. Like, obviously they're supposed to be best friends, and I completely believe them as best friends. They're gently ribbing each other and shoving each other, messing with each other, kind of like what kids of this age do and what close friends do. I think doesn't matter what age you are. I'm gonna comment on something I usually don't comment on, which is I think the hair and makeup was pretty good in this movie, which is a weird thing to notice, but like right from the cold open, I was like, man, this character looks kind of banged up, or like the hair, the way it's styled, like it really fit the vibe of what it was trying to showcase. And then obviously as a slasher, you can kind of guess there's going to be some sweat and dirt and some blood involved, right? So it was just very just well done. Like lots of times when there's blood in movies, you can just tell it's like really fake, or it's not the right color or the right viscosity. It was just something I noticed in this movie. I was like, it's really well done. And then you've mentioned the sound. You were probably specifically mentioning like the sound design itself. I want to mention the score. I want to give it a little, I want to shout it out. It's I'm not gonna say it's like the most original thing, but I thought that the percussive instruments in the score really like heightened the tension. It kind of creates like a really good beat to the scenes. You can picture a chase sequence, and when the drums are really coming in, like it really adds to the tension. It sets a pace. And there's also this recurring motif of like a plucking or a clicking noise that it comes at the right moments that keeps you on edge. It's kind of similar to like how Hereditary does like the noise that Charlie does. Like obviously in Hereditary it's a little bit more sparingly used, and it kind of happens a few times. This it's kind of like a core piece of the score. But I just thought, it was a great score. I noticed it. It's something I usually never notice in our horror movies. Usually yourself and Mike are the ones that notice that, but I thought it was really well done. And what I'm going to say is that I think it makes really good use of its budget. I don't know the numbers, but this movie had a lot more action set pieces than I expected. It had a lot more practical effects. It had a lot of stuff like windows and doors breaking and stuff, which is just like, as someone who's worked on a set, I know that shit's expensive. Like you don't always get, a half a dozen takes of throwing someone out a window or something, right? So I just thought, I don't know. I don't know if a lot of it was CGI or if it was just all practical stuff, but it looked great. So I was surprised. I'm not gonna lie. And the last thing I'll mention, which is a positive but also a very slight negative, is, as you've already mentioned, this takes place during the COVID era. And I think the implementation of COVID and kind of how core it is to the narrative is pretty good. But that being said, it'll bring me into my cons that it's like, it is a COVID movie during the COVID era that I can completely understand if some people don't want to watch, the mask discussion, or washing all your groceries and cereal boxes and stuff like that at the time when we didn't know if it was transmitted through surfaces and whatnot. Or, it basically has a lot of those COVID-19 talking points that, of course, have dominated the conversation and, for the last 2 or 3 years. So I completely understand if you're just not feeling up for that. But yeah, if you can kind of stomach that, I think there's a lot to like here. I'm a little mixed, I would say, on some of the latter set pieces and some aspects of the twists and turns throughout the movie, but obviously that's better left for the spoiler discussion. All in all, I think if you can stomach like watching a COVID movie right now, then I would recommend giving this one a watch. And obviously, you never said it explicitly, but I'm sure it's a recommend from you as well, right?
Yeah, I definitely would give it a recommend. And I think that, you know what, I had something specifically to ask you in the non-spoiler section.
All right, do it. Let's do it up.
I was thinking about this because it's not really a spoiler. So there's a use of a gun in it. So this piqued my interest, a little pondering, because I was like, is this a home invasion movie or a slasher? Because by definition, I find it hard to categorize it as a slasher.
Well, that's the thing. You've been using slasher throughout. So I've just basically let you say your piece that it's a slasher. Yeah. But no, I would much more lean towards this home invasion movie, similar to something like Hush. I think it was a talking point when I was on Every Horror Movie on Netflix and here on our own show with Hush. That is like, is it a slasher? Is it a horror movie? And this kind of operates in the same area as Hush to me, where it's like, it's probably more technically a thriller, but then it has, some bloodier kills or points to it. So it's kind of it's a little bit of both, I guess. It's not explicitly one or the other. Personally, gun to my head, I'd probably say it's a thriller that is a home invasion thriller that's a little bit bloodier than your average home invasion thriller, I guess,
I think that's a good answer.
And there's lots to discuss, I think, this time in the spoiler discussion. So I'd say we just cut on over to the spoiler discussion so we can get into it. So we are now in our spoiler discussion for Sick. So if you have not seen Sick, it's time to tune out. Come back once you've seen the movie. Or you can keep listening, I guess, if you don't care. If you're into spoilers, keep on listening. The more the merrier. And Rowan, usually I let you kick off our spoiler discussion, but tonight I wanted to kick things off because I had a specific question I wanted to ask. Basically, how did you feel about the third act reveal of the killers and their motivations? Did it work for you? Did you see it coming? How did it all play?
So the whole time, I thought I was going in, this was like one guy. We were kind of going to get, this, like you said, very kind of Hush-esque. I was thinking a lot about Hush when I was watching this. And then, they do that reveal where like, no, it's actually two guys. So then I'm like, I'm really trying, my mind's going on. First, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh shit, it's two guys. That's awesome. But then I was trying to think, I was like, oh, are these like frat guys? Because they kind of bring up like the fraternity brothers and they borrowed a truck. And then for some really weird reason, especially once it was Parker that like smashes Buddy's face with the tea kettle or whatever.
Yeah.
And then for some reason I started thinking, I was like, maybe these are like brothers. They're like twin brothers or something.
Okay.
Because with the mask on, I was like, they kind of look the same. They're like the same height.
Well, the movie does choose to linger on his face for kind of an extra couple seconds where I was like, am I supposed to recognize this guy? Like, obviously, it's probably partially for the gore effect, but he's so fucking banged up that I couldn't really see what he looked like, right?
But yeah, and then, once we get this reveal where, Pamela, played by Jane Addams, shows up, who was like the perfect, oh, I know that person, but I have no idea from where.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I was like, I have seen this lady, I feel like, all over the internet the last couple of years, just like this sort of character. Like I've just, maybe not even over the internet, just like working with, I feel like everyone has worked with a Pamela or like knows a Pamela. Like it was just a character that like once she showed up I was like, oh fuck, I've dealt with this person before.
But once we get Pamela, like that twist, that's where I was just like in glee. I was like, fuck, this is awesome. Like where, she gives the mask and then it's got the chloroform and I'm like,
that was a really good beat. Yeah.
In that whole scene, I was crying, like when she wouldn't let her in the car before we know she's like in on this. Cause I was just like, this fucking woman, and she's like trying to find the other mask. And I was just, I was crying. I was like, what a perfect kind of just, funny commentary on COVID. And yeah, that twist just blew my mind. And like you said, it's just twist after twist where it's like, oh, they're a family. Oh, and it just keeps going. I feel like there's there's like 3-4 twists in this. Because then we find out how they're like what their relation to these characters are, who the hell that guy was at the beginning. Like, it's just, I was like, these reveals are getting out of hand now. It's so many reveals.
Wait. I don't know if I got the reveal of who the guy was at the beginning. Who was the guy at the beginning?
Yeah, they give the monologue because they say they did the tracing, the COVID tracing, and the guy at the beginning was the one that gave it to her, gave COVID to her, and then she went to the party. I must have missed
that little line. Okay,
yeah.
All right, gotcha.
So, and like even that line, I was dying about the COVID tracing, and they were like,
the contact tracing, yeah.
And like, it was just perfection. I was like, Kevin Williamson, you did it again.
All right, so you loved it. I was gonna say I was a little bit more lukewarm on it, just because I saw a lot of it coming. Because obviously I knew that Benji, the one that she makes out with, has to factor in somewhere, right? So for a good portion of the movie, I was kind of same as yourself. I was on that frat boy aspect where I was like, I feel like this is a joint effort between DJ and like his fraternity or something, because basically as soon as he leaves the house, it's like when the killer sneaks in behind him, right? And obviously in a slasher movie, in the third act, it could be revealed like, well, that was my signal. If I'm gonna leave and go head out to the truck, you guys can come in and wreak havoc, and I won't be involved or something, right? So I was kind of thinking that, and it was just kind of like the way the movie was kind of cutting around, where basically Miri, like, she survived for so long, like when he was kind of skulking around the house, that I was kind of like, oh, maybe Miri's into it, and she's like basically angry at Parker that she's not taking COVID seriously. Maybe it was going to be like her best friend is the killer type of reveal. So I'm not going to lie, my head was definitely going a couple of different directions. But when we kind of sit down near the end of the movie, in the third act, obviously, and kind of reveal that her appearance at a party gave COVID to 8 other people, one of which was obviously like a fit kid who was at the party, and he died because of it. Then it was just like it was kind of like just a couple of levels like too detailed, like the fact that his mom and dad specifically were there killing, and the older brother and all this stuff, right? It was just like that was a whole family that were so like wound up on this one death that they just had to go murder everyone. It was maybe a slight bridge too far, and I think the movie could have got me back in as well, because I thought it was going to be revealed that Jane, or is her name? No, that's her real name, Pamela, in the movie. I thought it was going to be revealed that she was like an ER nurse or like a COVID nurse or like something like that, like worked in the medical field, because she gave me those vibes as well. And I was like, oh, this would be really interesting if they have like a nurse practitioner or something like in the movie that basically just couldn't take it anymore and basically just saw someone who wasn't taking the guidelines seriously and like broke. So I was expecting that sort of reveal, just kind of to like twist the knife or hammer it home a little bit more why she had this crazy vendetta against people just not taking COVID seriously, other than the fact that it passed on to her late child. But I just thought there was going to be like an extra detail that kind of reeled me in. So it was just, I don't know, I guess it was maybe a little bit of expectations for myself, or maybe how the movie kept kind of pointing me in different directions, like, which is sometimes fun,
I totally thought what was gonna happen, because like when they've got Parker on the couch and then they like basically give her the COVID test.
Yeah, which was very, very strange for a couple of minutes. I was like, what is this movie gonna be? I was like, is this an anti-masker movie or like an anti-vaxxer movie? Like, that's what I was wondering too.
So one of my questions was that I was kind of I kept thinking, like, I was like, is this a pro or an anti? But then I really thought about it, and I was like, I think that's kind of the fun of it. Is I think you like on both sides you can kind of watch it and you can kind of laugh about it. And I mean, I think even if you're kind of all these pro mandates and all that stuff and that, like, you can still kind of laugh at yourself about it too. Because I mean, it's a predicament, that in our lifetime we've never really been in. So we can still kind of be like, wow, like, yeah, we were, I remember in the very beginning when, I'm going to the grocery store or something and it's kind of like a ghost town. People are coughing and like everyone's just glaring at them.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
So, I mean, it definitely, you can laugh at it. But what I was saying about the twist was, so I thought they were going to COVID test her, give the big monologue speech, and then she wasn't going to test positive. And then it would have been like they killed all these people and it was for nothing because she wasn't the one.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty dark thing. Yeah, a dark ending there. I mean, the movie's already dark enough, but yeah.
But while we're talking about Pamela, I do want to say I was highly, highly impressed with the Pamela kill and just the stunt work. Because I mean, I can only imagine how hard it is when you set people on fire. I've seen lots of like featurettes, documentaries on it, and like that goes for a little bit. Like she's running down that road, and I'm like, is she dropping anytime soon? Or
yeah, it's interesting as well because when she runs out of the shed, they do a vertigo shot on it as well, which obviously like you see it as well, which makes it look like the road is further and further away as she's running towards it.
Yeah,
and then when you actually get the shot of her running down the road, which I assume would have to be two separate shots. I mean, otherwise the actor is running for an extra 10 seconds on fire. It goes for for at least like probably 7 or 8, 10 seconds, before the stunt performer obviously drops on the ground. But it's also whatever suit or whatever rig they had to light them on fire. It's not like really bulky and like over the top. Like I know on Game of Thrones when people would get caught on fire, lots of the times they'd be in suits of armor because it'd kind of obscure all the protective gear.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was because it was a smaller, scrappier movie that maybe they did it in a different method, but it wasn't like quite as obvious that like this was a stunt performer. Like the proportions seemed kind of accurate to like Pamela's character as well, which was pretty impressive as well as I was watching it.
Yeah, and I was gonna say really like another big thing for me in this movie, and I feel like I've brought it up at least on the main show before, but obviously I have talked about before that I like severely like shattered and broke my ankle, like the bone sticking out of the skin before. So ever since then, in movies, when people break things, my whole body just has a reaction to it. So I kept thinking, I'm like, could I really, under all this pressure and all this pain, everything going on, be that cool and make a wood splint to be able to escape? And I think the answer is no for me. I'm highly
I've never
impressed.
broken a bone, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
I was just like, man, like I couldn't do it. I'm always impressed in movies. They get up from these injuries and it's like a broken leg. And I'm thinking, man, I was like passed out. I was like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, in the movies, the argument is always like, obviously, this is a life or death scenario, right? You have the adrenaline pumping through you that this is like, we're watching the moment that they're at like their strongest. But yeah, like Miri, she's laid out for quite a while there. Actually, the way the movie frames it and the way she falls, I thought they were saying her back was broken at first.
Yeah.
So for a little bit, I was like, okay, movie, you're going a little bit too far. This girl is pulling herself up the stairs and sitting on a stool and all this stuff with, a broken back. But then thankfully they show the bone protruding from her shin area. But yeah, for a little while, I was like, all right, this is going a little bit too far, even for a slasher or for whatever you want to call this thing. Yeah, I do think all in all, you were saying like the movie, you're not sure which way it kind of leans, like if it's like pro-vaccinization and pro-mask and stuff. I think it is. I think it honestly is, because the way the movie kind of winds up leaning is that they are kind of critiquing her for going to these end-of-the-world COVID parties, which of course were all the rage. And not in 2019, but obviously in 2020, it was a big thing. And I used to see a lot of influencers doing them and people kind of discussing it. And, it used to drive me crazy as well. I know about like they discuss, I think, spring break at one point in the movie, which was a huge, super spreading event. So basically the movie is like criticizing the main character for sure, because she's an asymptomatic carrier to go to this party. Right. It's like basically it is like, this is what you get for going to this party, right? You deserve everything that's coming for you. Obviously, I'm not saying the people that went to those parties deserve to be murdered, but it is kind of like, it winds up basically being like, I understand where the movie is kind of making this part of the narrative, where it's like our frustrations with those sorts of people during 2020 and 2021 even kind of brought on the big screen. It was interesting. I was like, okay, that's... the movie is kind of sticking its, drawing its line in the sand. so to say. I was going to point over some like goofier moments or some sillier parts that didn't really work for me, but I don't know if you wanted to go on the same train of thought with the COVID stuff or not. But
no, you go with that. You go with that.
All right. One of the things I got a note here for is that they have a dance party sequence, and Miri is like spraying the like disinfectant spray like as they're dancing. That was a moment in the movie that I kind of was like, what is going on here? I was very, very confused because I was like, I feel like the sorts of people that would be having like a dance party, getting all sweaty and dancing closely around other people and like heavily breathing wouldn't be worried about, you know, the disinfectant spray. And what I will say is that character is a little bit inconsistent with keeping people pushed away and then letting them close and then pushing them away and then putting masks on. It's a little bit of an inconsistency throughout the movie that I definitely noticed. But the like silliest thing that I think the movie can completely function without it being in there is the floating dock scene where she's standing on the dock, and now we know is the father. This is like a 50-year-old man just doing laps around this dock like he's Jaws or something, you know, like stabbing up through the dock and hopping on the dock, and basically it winds up stabbing her hand. But I did think that was a little bit like unnecessary. It was like, that was probably like a 4 or 5 minute scene, and we didn't really need that. We could have had her dive in the water and cut to her climbing out on the other shore where it's like the bigger sequence with her neighbor and the shotgun, right?
Yeah, I thought they could have cut it down. I'll be honest, I did like the scene. I thought it was a little bit of a homage to it was giving me like Creep Show 2, The Raft vibes.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, kind of the Jaws where they do the really low camera shots of like the knife just kind of sliding, just like a fin. I didn't mind it, but I did think it went a little too long. And also, like you said, I kind of had the thought, I'm like, man, it's night. They kind of comment that it's cooler during the day, so I'm like, it's probably way colder at night.
Yeah.
And this guy's just like in the water, like underwater.
Yeah.
Not like poking his head out. So I was like, this guy, A, how is he breathing? And B, like, yeah, it'd be so cold.
Yeah, no, it was just something that took me out of, that was like one of the like little twists in the movies that I kind of alluded to in the spoiler-free section that I was like, that was kind of silly. And then, like I said, some of the motivations or how overly explained the relations between all the characters were was a little bit hokey as well. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was pretty good. Kind of my last note that I'll mention is that for a lot of the movie, it was really uncanny for me to be watching this because in my most recent production that I worked on, we shot at a cabin that's basically identical to this. It's like a rental property that's like out on, on a lake. It's all like very rustic and lodge with all these big, God, what are the trees? Logs everywhere, a log cabin, right? And it just looked almost identical to this thing. And I was there for 3 days, right? So it was just like, as I was watching this, I was like, there were certain shots where I was like, geez, is this where I shot? Obviously it's not, but it looked so similar at times that it was a little bit, I don't know, it was pretty uncanny. It was weird watching this thing. It was, it was a good location, good location for this sort of movie.
Yeah, it really did work. I was going to say my last thought on it was kind of back to the dance scene. All I could think about was bodies. I was like, didn't we just do a dance party? But
yeah, I
also thought, I don't know if I've ever hung around outside and smoked a joint and then thought, boy, I have so much energy. I feel like it's the opposite of what weed does. I'm not like,
they should have took some uppers or something.
Yeah, I was like, it would have made more sense if they, it was like Molly or like something like that.
I also noticed that there was a bag of off-brand, movie-friendly nacho Doritos in the movie. So, I mean, if they're smoking the dope out by the lake, they should have had those bad boys broken open, I think.
And that's the final word.
But yeah, if you have nothing else left to discuss, I say we just get into the review, or the rubric, what we're going to score this.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Sick?
So I feel like if you've listened, I'm going to give it a yay. I obviously thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm definitely going to rewatch it. I'll probably rewatch it sooner or later because the minute Exili got back from her appointment, I'm like, you have to watch this movie. Like,
yeah,
I was just like, I think you'll really enjoy it. You'll get all the jokes, all the twists. But yeah, I think, this is finally a good movie that we review that goes directly to Peacock. This is not a they/them, travesty. It really works. I will say I'm almost kind of disappointed that this didn't go to theaters. Like, this is something I would have loved to see in the theater.
I think with the proper marketing, yeah, this could have made a little bit of money in theaters for sure.
So, I mean, like, to me, like, as much as, last episode, like, I really enjoyed Megan, stuff like that, like, I would have enjoyed this far more than I would have enjoyed Megan. I just thought it was really well done. But yeah, I'll give it a yay. What would you give it, Colton?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I enjoyed it a little bit more than Megan as well. And this is another Blumhouse movie, so I mean, it's
2023 just killing
2023. It. They're off to a good start. And yeah, I'm going to give it a yay. I feel like you're a little bit more positive on it than I am, but I mean, the movie is just so competent in what it's doing in terms of this cat and mouse, this home invasion, the chase sequences. And like I said, the fact that there's so many different action set pieces, like we never talked about the truck backing up down the driveway with a blown tire.
Yeah.
We never talked about we kind of glossed over the guy getting his head bludgeoned in with, I think it was like the base of the mixer or something, like, the axe that comes in. There's so much shit in this movie that I was very impressed with how they kept ratcheting up the stakes and kind of keeping things fresh when it is essentially just two women getting chased around a house for, not 80 minutes, but certainly 40 minutes, So yeah, I was very impressed. I think this was a big win for Peacock. Definitely, it doesn't wash the taste of they/them from my mouth, but this is certainly a huge step in the right direction. So yeah, it's going to be a yay from me. And if you've made it this far on the show and you're not following us on social media, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Slasher, Letterboxd. Basically, if there's a place that, it's a social media platform, we're there at It Slays Podcast. And Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
So yeah, if you are looking to get your spooky music on, you can go to Spotify and in the search bar, look up It Slays Podcast Horrific Playlist. If you have any problems finding it, all those social media Colton just talked about, there's a Linktree link, and there's a link right in there to the playlist. We put music from movies we review, or iconic movies, or just horror movies that we love, and we put songs that remind us of it, scores, anything that's got to do with that movie that we like, it's up there. Maybe we'll have to check out if the score to this comes out, because there was some good kind of ambient drum stuff going on, like you pointed out. So maybe
yeah, for sure.
A sick playlist for, I don't know, when you're studying for your university tests or something. Or you're
there we go.
Or you're wiping down all your groceries. You can listen to it.
And I think that's all that's left is to say next time on the show, it looks like it's going to be a little while before Skinamarink actually hits Shudder. I thought it was going to be hitting Shudder a lot sooner, but from what I see, it's still not available on there. So we'll probably wait until that's on Shudder to cover that. It's just in a limited theatrical release right now from what I can see online. So I'd say the next thing we're going to be covering on the show is probably Infinity Pool. Because I think that comes out in a couple of weeks. As you know, Brandon Cronenberg. I'm sure we're both looking forward to that.
Very much so.
Yeah, and with that, I think that about wraps things up for this week. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.